We're going to transition a little bit. Mark actually has a second book out. Both of these are quite new. Russia Rising, Tracking the Bear in Bible Prophecy. You'd have to find it on Amazon or in a Christian bookstore. And obviously, Russia's in the news. Russia's meddling all sorts of places, including the Middle East. And Prime Minister Netanyahu recently went and visited with Vladimir Putin. Mark, quickly, what were your thoughts when these two gentlemen met? This is now a couple weeks ago.
Well, I think, if you're Prime Minister Netanyahu, you're going to do whatever you've got to do to try to get any help from anybody. I think he realizes that Russia is right there on his northern border in Syria. All that chaos in Syria that's happened there with Bashar al-Assad and his regime has brought Russia right there on Israel's northern border, and Iran as well, which are two of the nations mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39.
Right.
So I think, Netanyahu realizes and understands that the real power broker in all of this is Russia, that they're the key, and that Putin is the one really who's pulling the strings with all this, because if they abandoned Assad, you could fall so quickly. So, with Netanyahu, he's trying to do whatever he can do to try to calm the situation there, find out what's happening, try to talk sense and reason into Putin. So he's doing everything he can, I'm sure, to try to keep everything as calm as he can and certain as he can of what's going to happen up there in Syria and how that's all going to play out. I think he's wise to do that, but I'm sure that he understands that Putin is not his friend.
Yeah. Would you agree with me? And I think, we're really cautious here. We don't try to name the Antichrist. We don't try to name the false prophet. And I don't think we should try to name Gog as well, Gog from the land of Magog. But I think that Vladimir Putin, he's very Gog-esque. Would I be out of line to say that?
No, that's a great statement. I think Joel Rosenberg
came up with that once, yeah.
Yeah, that he's Gog-alike, or he's certainly Gog-esque. Mm-hmm. If Putin is not Gog, certainly if these events began to unfold quickly, the rapture taking place and all that, he could be Gog.
Could be.
But if he's not, he's paving the way for someone like Gog who will come to Russia. Putin's probably the richest man in the world. He may be 3 times richer than Bill Gates. It's staggering, the wealth that he has and the power that he has. So if these events were to unfold soon in the times in which we live, then he could certainly play the role of Gog.
Well, the tracks of the Russian bear lead straight to the Middle East and on to Israel, and I'm sure you covered that, Mark. I was listening here recently in the last day or so to Amir Sarfati give an online update, and he said that Israel has recently had the largest military drill in 20 years, and he went on to say that while the whole world is watching North Korea, Israel is worrying about other things, including Iran and including Russia in the Middle East, and he feels that North Korea is nothing but a smokescreen. I'd like your take on North Korea as we speak. I don't think we know where this crisis, and it is a crisis, is going, and I have to say up front here, this program right now is pre-recorded. That means in the next couple of days something horrific could happen in North Korea, and Mark, your concern is as mine that a worst-case scenario could develop in North Korea. Talk to me a little bit about how you see North Korea possibly, and emphasize possibly, fitting into a last day scenario.
Well, I see North Korea like I do kind of with ISIS in a way. They're not mentioned in the Bible specifically. Obviously, there's no specific prophecy that ISIS is fulfilling, I don't believe. I don't think there's any specific prophecy that North Korea fulfills. North Korea could be part of the kings of the East. It's mentioned in Revelation chapter 16. The Euphrates rivers dried up to make their way finally into the land of Israel. So North Korea, in that sense, could be part of that. We don't know exactly what nations will make up this end-time coalition called the Kings of the East. But I just look at our world today, and you just think about what's happening in Syria, think about what's happening with Russia, think about what's happening in North Korea, and there's just these hot spots like this that are just developing all over the world simultaneously. And I think that's just a picture for us of just the chaos and the fear and the uncertainty of these last days as they're unfolding. And I believe certainly this is all paving the way for the rise of the Antichrist at some point, because he's going to come forward, I believe, as a person who has some kind of a plan, some kind of a peace plan for Israel. But I think there'll be a lot of peace on the whole world for at least some brief period of time. So that's part of the way I see this, is just so much, just the fomenting of chaos and fear and uncertainty. And it could be that before long there could be the unleashing of a new era of a nuclear nightmare.
Yes, there
because
could be.
We don't know with our government now, with President Trump, and we need to be praying for him and his military leaders of figuring out what to do, because unleashing some type of attack on North Korea would be terrible. It would be especially terrible for South Korea. And economically, it could be devastating and all kinds of things. But which is the lesser of two evils here? And that's the issue that's going to have to be figured out, because the leader there in Korea is unstable. He's a madman, and what will he do? We can't allow him to get those things. So this could be a pivotal moment, really, in the history of the world when nuclear weapons are unleashed one way or another, both ways. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I see this as playing into this scenario in the end that people are just going to be confused and begging for someone to come to bring some semblance of peace to this world. And they're going to get that man, but it's going to be a counterfeit peace that's going to come, and he's going to be the worst nightmare of the world ultimately at some point in time when the veil comes off, the velvet glove comes off of the iron hand, and then he'll begin to dominate and to rule the world.
Going back to Russia for just a moment here, because again, I'm holding in my hands Mark's second newest book. Actually, it's a brand new book. I haven't read it. I only got it a day or two ago, Russia Rising, Tracking the Bear in Bible Prophecy. Again, Amazon or your local Christian bookstore. But in it, it says, Russia is on the move. The evidence of Russia's aggression is everywhere. Newspaper headlines, magazines, internet sites, TV news. Russia's influence is gaining momentum. Like it or not, the world has been forced into a Putin-led Cold War 2.0. And so true. This man, he's trying to gobble up territory wherever he goes. But I think the fact that he's poised on Israel's northern border, in a sense he's there, is the most troubling, next to his association with Iran, because we've got the setup there for Gog, Magog, Ezekiel 38-39. But I just wonder how long Israel is going to tolerate Russia meddling in the Middle East.
Well, I don't really know if they have a choice really right now with that. I mean, I think Russia, there's things Israel can do against Iran, hitting their nuclear facilities and things like that. But with Russia, that's why I think Netanyahu met with Putin, is he's just trying to play things out the best that he can, I'm sure. It's a terrible situation for Israel, and I really think it's a foreshadow of what's coming in the future. I mean, over 2,500 years ago, the Jewish prophet Ezekiel prophesied in Ezekiel 38 that a coalition of nations would come down to Israel in the latter years, in the last days. And one of those nations is Russia, and one of those nations is Iran. And those two nations now have troops in Syria on Israel's northern border. Now, that was unthinkable even just a few years ago. You had Syria to the north of Israel, and they were a problem for Israel. We were all prophesying. We were all saying, look, the Bible says Russia and Iran, ancient Persia, are going to come into Israel. And there they are right now on Israel's northern border. And I think this is one of the most dramatic stage-setting events that we see happening in the world today for Bible prophecy. Not to mention Putin, and they've gone into Georgia and Crimea and Ukraine. They're threatening the Baltic states. So their whole view is they want to destroy Europe. They want to divide up NATO, and he wants to bring about a resurgence of the influence to bring back the bear, if you will, to bring back the influence of the Soviet Union. That's Putin's plan.